Back here live for episode 15, I believe is what we're on. It'll be labeled 14, but episode 15 of the Baseline Banter. Joining me, as always, is Travis Wilson. We're down a man though today. We're down a man. Coach Smith, season ended yesterday with the Hartford Orioles. He needed some time to gather his thoughts, and he didn't want to talk about basketball today, which I get it. Anytime, any place, anywhere, this is the best time of the year. High school basketball, college basketball, everything going on. Trav, how we doing?
Good. And let's not forget, last weekend was perhaps the busiest weekend of the high school sports calendar, certainly of the winter sports calendar, as we had boys regionals, which is always an incredible time, girls sectionals in basketball, and we had state hockey, we had state team wrestling, we had state gymnastics. So there was a lot going on in the high school sports space, including high school basketball. And we are getting down to the end of it. Only 35 girls basketball games left this year, or excuse me, not 35. That was before Saturday. We're down to 20 or 15 girls basketball games left, and what is it, like 65 boys basketball games, something like that. So we're almost wrapped up on this year.
Yeah, it's funny how you hit that second, or probably that second to last week of the regular season, and that last month and a half, including the playoffs, just it's gone in the blink of an eye. As always, here on the Baseline, we are presented by Bound. We pumped out a lot of content this past week and weekend in boys and girls basketball. So head over to boundwisconsin.com, see that regional previews, sectional previews, in boys and girls. We're pushing out a bunch of all conference lists here over the next couple weeks. Mr. and Mrs. Basketball, something that we need to touch on that I didn't have in the notes. The finalists were announced this past week, as well as always, you're going to get your scores, your stats, your schedules, everything going on here over the next 2 weeks of the sports season. I think before we do hop into anything specifically statewide, Travis is, again, I'm going to repeat myself. This is my favorite time of the year. Though the season ended on Tuesday for our Richland Center Hornets, I love getting into a gym and just being able to watch basketball. My favorite thing is getting there about an hour early and sitting there when it's a little empty. People are waiting to get in, that first rush, but then, especially if there's no music playing, there's no JV game beforehand, and you can just feel the energy and the noise level creep up, creep up, creep up, and it hits that 15-minute mark when warm-ups happen, and boom, pep band starts, and that's when it really gets going.
Yeah, it feels like a unique environment in part because there's no JV game, there's no nothing that delays or happens before. You're waiting for that 7 o'clock time to tip off. You're waiting for that 15-minute buzzer to start, and waiting for everything to kick into high gear. We have been spoiled. We've gone to a lot of games and a lot of high profile games at state tournament and all kinds of stuff. And I will say that the last couple of years, I've been able to get out to a few more games with a little bit less coverage responsibility at times, including sectional games. And that has been a lot of fun because, regional finals and sectional games are the best environments of the entire year. Unless you get a really outstanding state tournament game that comes right down to the end, I would take a sectional environment over a state environment most days. It just feels different in those smaller facilities, especially if you're in a gym and not a giant field house. I got to go Thursday to a sectional semifinal for girls between Aquinas and Wisconsin Dells at Reedsburg High School. It's it's a good sized seating area, but it's a small gym. We only have 2 side courts, and the one's not even a full side court hardly. So it's a small gym, and it felt amazing, the environment and the atmosphere in there. Wisconsin Dells, obviously being very close by, was a huge factor. There was tons of Dells people there. There was a very sizable crowd from Aquinas. It was a great environment, everything that you look for in a high school basketball game. Similar on Saturday, I got to go to Mauston to take in Barneveld against Independence Gilmanton. Similar scenario, a good sized gym, but not a field house, rocking environment. Just felt, um, really unique that we don't see a lot in the regular season. And again, I would take that environment over a state environment unless it's a really close game coming down to the end.
Yeah, I 100% agree. You got to go to two games this past week, Thursday, Saturday. My week was a little bit different. Tuesday night, we played. Uh, we were down at Lancaster, 13 seed out of 13. We played down at Lancaster, and we were up for, I think, 30 minutes of the 36 minutes. Played really well. We're up double digits in the second half for a while. Just ran out of gas a little bit. And that Lancaster team that beat us ended up going on and winning a regional championship. That's a little bit of a motivation for our group, I hope, going into 26-27.
It can be, if the young kids see things the right way and they lock in and they work over the next 6 months, it absolutely can be. We see it all the time, with momentum carried towards the end of the season. I mean, my Reedsburg football team that I coach, that my sons play on, last year, in 2024, had a heartbreaking last second loss to a Catholic Memorial team that went on to play in the state title game. And that served us well as motivation to carry into the next year, and we ended up getting to state. So hopefully that happens for the Richland Center Hornets. It's been, as we've talked about a few times, quite a drought in terms of getting to sectionals. Um, I think Lancaster, the last time they were in sectionals was in the 1980s, and I think Richland Centers is longer. So it'd be great to see that come to an end at some point, and hopefully for Richland Center and all these teams that saw their seasons end, and all these players, they can build on that end of season.
Yeah, I do want to give a little bit of a shout out to our conference, SWC. Our conference didn't have the heavy hitters. Mineral Point was the 1 seed, Aquinas was the 2. Aquinas ended up losing to Lodi in I don't know if it was necessarily a shocker. Lodi's been playing really well. They got two really good kids. And then Platteville ended up beating Lodi in the regional final. So both regional champs out of our half sectional were two teams that we have played really well over the years. So congrats to the Hillman and Flying Arrows. Little SWC pride there. Friday, though, went to Kickapoo, just down the road. It's a little bit of I don't know if I necessarily have my media hat on when I go to Kickapoo games. I know Coach Wood. I've been in and around that school. Obviously, we've talked in the past how family ties run deep at the old Kickapoo High School. So got to go there. Rebecca's parents were around, so got to take the in-laws, and I think that they enjoyed it a little bit. But Kickapoo's a little bit of a smaller gym, and it's funny sitting there watching that game. Kickapoo ended up winning by double digits. It was pretty in hand, and Kyle Nelson, an assistant coach with me, and his son were there, and all three of us had 4 or 5 different games going on our phones at once, trying to catch everything, and just the hoops junkie, it just can't get out of you. So that was my Friday. Yesterday I went over to Gale Electric Trempealeau and took in a really, really, really good D3 game between Mosinee and Gale Electric Trempealeau. GT ended up winning that one by, I think, 5, but it was closer than a 5-point game, even though that's a close game. I think me and you do things a little differently when we go to games. I think you sit away from everyone, right?
Yeah, I especially, on those ones, I want to work to an extent and have my computer out. And so if they have a table available, I prefer that. If they don't, I'll sit in the stands and just do stuff on my phone. But I prefer a little bit of a working environment.
I like getting in the weeds a little bit. I'm a little different. I sat right in the middle of not the student section, but fan section. I it's fun just interacting, talking with people. That Mosinee group, they in the afternoon, they were all up in Eau Claire as their girls punched their state ticket to uh, or their ticket to the state tournament. The girls team did, and then they all traveled down to GT to watch the boys team play. It was funny. The girls team came in with, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes before the warm up started, and all the parents gave them a big round of applause and whatnot. So that was kind of cool. But yeah, that was my weekend. This week's going to be a lot more. I'm going to be out at a game Thursday, at least one, if not two, on Saturday. Trev, are you heading up to Green Bay this week?
Yep, heading to Green Bay on Thursday. There all weekend, and looking forward to a good day of girls hoops.
Yeah, got to take advantage of these last 2 weeks. Hoop season ends, and you kind of fiddle with your thumbs. Becca, that first practice is, Trav, I know, I'm sure you felt this as with football. That very first day after your last game, where you don't have a practice and your afternoon/evening is open. I paced the house looking at my phone for a good half hour, 45 minutes. I was walking upstairs, walking around, nothing, no idea of what I wanted to do, no idea of what I could do. I it was just nervous pacing without any agenda.
Yeah, it's different for sure. The thing, I guess, when we exit, like we've got to still do a job in basketball, just like Coach Smith is kind of dealing with right now. Um, when your team loses, your basketball season is not done. You got 2 more weeks for you, Colton, and
Yeah.
for us for football. I mean, we made it to a state championship game, and that next week was Thanksgiving, and so things were a little different. But it definitely does feel different. Much rather be at practice and watching film and doing all the other things that it takes to get ready. But again, for you got to get back into it and stay into it.
Yeah, and it's kind of a different perspective, right? Where I took that Wednesday night off and just kind of, I think Becca and I ended up doing our taxes, so we ended up doing busy work anyway. But yeah, I kind of have to reverse and put that coach hat comes off pretty quick, and the work hat comes on pretty quickly right after that. So I think 9 years of being in this, though I haven't covered basketball quite to the extent that I have the last couple years, but getting back into the grind and seeing everything has kind of helped me being able to turn that leaf over. Before we do hop into our girls and boys, girls sectional preview, girls sectional review and preview of the state tournament, and then our boys section or boys regional preview, let's talk about the Mr. and Ms. basketball that was released. The semifinalists came out. 5 boys, 5 girls. I'm trying to bring up the semifinalists right now.
We did talk about that on a previous show.
Did it not come out this week?
It was the second, I guess. Yeah, it was last week.
So it would have come out Monday. Looking for your article. Great noise going on right now. Great podcasting by us.
Well, let's run through the boys finalist for Mr. Basketball, which again is presented by the Wisconsin Basketball Coaches Association, voted on by a panel of WBCA executive board members, many of them retired coaches who have met a number of times to talk about, review their notes. Many of them watch games, whether it's in person or on stream. There was a semifinalist list of 10 that was produced. The finalists were announced last week, and then the winner of the Mr. Basketball Award will be announced next week. So the finalists for that award: Yusuf Gray Jr. from West Allis Central, Amari Herford from Beloit Memorial, Andrew Jensen from Kaukauna, Josh Manchester from Mount Horeb, and Xavier Zenz from Wisconsin Lutheran. Now, one of the unfortunate things is a couple of those guys missed some time with injury. Josh Manchester missed a couple weeks for Mount Horeb, although he has come back, thankfully, and has had a good showing. Went over 2,500 career points, maybe even Saturday.
Yep, 10th all time now.
Yeah, moving into the top 10. Yusuf Gray Jr. missed or went out a few weeks ago. We talked about the potential maybe for his return, but it's a moot point because, as we'll talk about, West Allis Central exited the playoffs last week. So those two are out, but Amari Herford, Andrew Jensen, Xavier Zenz, Still going for their teams. I think Yusuf Gray Jr. probably would have been in a top two if you would have had that going at one point. But with the injury, I think it is likely, in my opinion, and I don't have a vote. I'm not on that committee. I think it's Xavier Zenz and Amari Herford are likely the two favorites right now, with perhaps Zenz being the favorite based on that success that Wisconsin Lutheran has had. But Beloit Memorial into sectional play in that kind of old Big Eight group.
Yeah.
And if they can come out of there and get to state, I mean, that is going to make it interesting because he's put up some huge numbers with huge efficiency this year. So
yeah, I do think the committee got it right looking at the list of five. Outside of Gray, I think all four of these have made it to the sectionals. Obviously, Yusuf Gray was going to be included in the five just based on what he's done and everything. Very unfortunate injury. But yeah, I do. I mean, Hereford put up 51 in the semifinals and then 39 in the regional championship game. So as far as the five that it's boiled down to, I think the committee got it right. I did find the group on the girls' side, Trav. Your your finalists this year in the girls' side is Janelle Janikowski out of Pewaukee, Addie Ketterhagen from Oostburg, Natalie Kuso at Arrowhead, Mikhail Litska from Wauwatosa East, and Adeline Shepley out of Rice Lake. I think all five are at the state tournament this year.
all
Is
five at state.
that's pretty awesome?
It is. We've got a great representation, and we'll talk about the girls' state tournament a little bit more. But we've got a great representation of outstanding elite teams, elite players. There's some very good players in this class that is the 26 class is outstanding in girls basketball. We've talked about it. There's some girls that are not going to be there. That from a fan perspective, it would have been great to have the state be able to see them play. Whether it's Leah Nordine from Shawano, Samantha Davis from Aquinas, some other kids, but this is a great representation of high school basketball and high school girls basketball that we have with the Ms. Basketball list. Zal Janowski, and all these girls have been there before too. It's not just this is their first time. All of them have been there before. It's a tough one. I think you could look at a very strong case for any of them. I think Natalie Kuso continues to be perhaps a little bit of a favorite, but you can make a strong case for any of them. Addie Ketterhagen, with Oostburg, again, you can make a case for them as the best team in the state, regardless of division. You can make a case for Wauwatosa East being that, and Micaiah Litsa being kind of the engine that drives them. Addie Shepley, just an incredible individual player for Rice Lake, has got them back to the state tournament along with Addison Schmidt, an outstanding junior post player for them. So a good representation of high school basketball, excellent candidates for Ms. Basketball. That award will be announced on Thursday of this week and presented at the state tournament on Saturday. So look for the announcement Thursday morning and then the presentation on Saturday, depending on how that schedule works.
Yeah. Again, the group you look at it and all five girls are at the state tournament. I think that's a pretty good crop of finalists to be able to choose from on the girls' side in a class that had 10 deserving semifinalist.
And probably more that could have easily been finalists. We talked
Correct.
about a few kids that were not on that 10 semifinalist list, and in a lot of years probably would have been finalists, and they didn't even make the semifinalist list.
Time to switch gears. Girls sectionals were played this past week, and I think what we're going to do is we're going to hop through this division by division with a little bit of a sectional review, and then we're going to dive into a little bit of a state tournament preview. Trav, I'm going to help guide us here as you've been our girls basketball aficionado on the podcast this year. If you look at D1, there's a lot of games that weren't close in the sectional semis. Even in the sectional finals, were all four. Only one game was determined by less than 10 points. We've talked about that gap between the have and have-nots. There were some really good games in regional finals the previous week, but let's dive into that D1 side. Let's go through it. You had Notre Dame, Pewaukee, Arrowhead, and Tosa East all come out of it. What were some storylines? What were some of the games that you saw that, whether it caught your eye? What do you want to touch on here in D1?
Well, let's go back to sectional semifinals where there were some really good games with 10 or so really strong teams in Division One that led to some good games at the sectional final level. One of those was Kimberly, the defending state champions, going out to Notre Dame in a sectional semifinal. That was a close game, a 6-point game. So the defending champions go out. That's always a storyline. We'll get a new champ in Division One. Hartford had a close competitive game against a very good Appleton East squad, which allowed Hartford to get into the sectional final. On some of the other games, they were a little more in hand at that level. Ocean Bradford was kind of the surprise team to get into that sectional final level. And then the sectional finals, I mean, not really that close, not that surprising. The 4 teams that made it to state are the top 4 teams in the Bound Power Index. All of them played outstanding schedules this year. And interestingly enough, 3 of those 4 have been elevated already from D2 to D1. So the tournament performance factor certainly having an impact, good or bad or indifferent, it has an impact because there's some Division One teams that would have been at state that are not because of the tournament performance factor and what it did elevating those Division Two schools. We've seen it on the girls' side that the elite teams in girls basketball, it doesn't really matter as much what division they're in, especially 1 and 2, or even down into 3 with Oostburg and Kettle Moraine Lutheran and some of the strength that's down there. A lot of those teams are playing each other. It's top heavy in girls basketball. We got the top 4 teams in Division One, and I think it's really going to be fun to see how it plays out. You've got Tosa East, the defending champions in Division Two, coming back with a lot of talent from last year. We talked to Coach Merg earlier this season. They've kind of, not been challenged a ton. Had a couple close games along the way, but undefeated. Arrowhead took a couple losses to Oostburg and Tosa East, but they've been at state before with that group a couple years ago. Natalie Cuso is a dynamic player, one of the best players in the state. You've got Pewaukee back at state after a strong run with the Terrian twins and making it in Division Two several times and getting back to state now with a new group with Giselle Janowski kind of getting back into form. She missed much of last year with injury. She was still, I think it took a little while for her to round into the form that she would like to have. But good to see her getting back to it. And then Notre Dame, winning 3 straight titles at one point earlier in this decade, and now getting back in Division One with a completely different group. It's not Gracie Gresh and that group that was there for a long time, but Sarah Rohde at Notre Dame is absolutely one of the best coaches in the state, and they're back at it again. They knocked off defending champion Kimberly in that sectional semifinal. So 4 great teams, 4 great matchups. If we look at seeding, I think it came out right. As much as you could say that it's right. No surprises in the seeding necessarily. You could maybe argue Pewaukee, Notre Dame, one way or another.
Let's save that for our state tournament preview.
Yeah.
Let's
yeah. I mean, no surprises in Division One, at least at the sectional level. Moving on to Division Two, similar story. Not a lot of surprises there, at least in the sectional final games. Going back to sectional semifinal, Edgewood did go down in a sectional semifinal. We saw Milton defeat them in a sectional semifinal. It was a lot of 1 seeds that made it through. I mean, that was one of the stories. It was 32 or 33 out of the 36 1 seeds advanced into sectional play, which meant we were going to get hopefully some better games. We saw a few in there. But not necessarily at the sectional final level. Probably the most competitive game was Shawano and Rice Lake. I got a chance to watch some of that one later in the afternoon. And it was a good back and forth game with Addie Shepley and Leah Nordine on each side, both Wisconsin recruits, similar lengthy, talented type players. Rice Lake has a little bit more around Addie Shepley, though. Again, Addison Schmidt is a scholarship level player as a junior that provides that second option for Rice Lake. And so they were able to get through. Otherwise, again, not a lot of surprise necessarily, or kind of intrigue in some of those games in
And
Division.
that surprises me a little bit. I do know that Rice Lake Lacrosse Central game. I think Rice Lake was up 20 something at one point in that one. Lacrosse Central battled it back. I want to say they had it down to 5 or so, something like that. But a lot of these games, they might show 13 points as being that, determining final score or final the margin of victory, but a 13 to 18 point game could very well be a 6 point game and just be a one team, the leading team made free throws, the other team, the trailing team didn't make a shot on those alternating possessions. But still, that intrigue and that hopeful end of game madness wasn't quite there in the D1 and D2 levels, especially in those sectional finals.
Yeah, in Division Three, one of the most anticipated, games of the playoffs was that sectional semifinal I was able to take in at Reedsburg High School between Aquinas and Wisconsin Dells, and wasn't quite sure what to expect. Aquinas playing a little bit tougher schedule. The Dells played a couple strong games towards the end of the year. Otherwise, really weren't challenged, undefeated this year, and it was impressive the way the Dells came out and controlled that thing from the very get go. Natalie Backus, Ashaya Hopkins, Asia Gall, an impressive freshman for the Dells, and that entire group really came out and dominated from the get go. They never let Aquinas really be in that game, and it was a 14-point game, but honestly, it felt like more than that. It was over 20 for much of the game. Aquinas was able to make a run late using a full court press that allowed them to get back into it. But again, it was too late at that point. They were down 24 or 26 points at one point, and the Dells knocked down free throws to be able to close it out, and then went on to an impressive win over Edgerton. Edgerton kept that one close. That was a very competitive game at Portage High School, with the Dells beating Edgerton by 6. That was the closest score out of those ones. Another storyline in Division Three was in Sectional 1, where Mosinee comes out of that group as a 3 seed in their sectional. They defeated Wittenberg-Burnhamwood in a sectional semifinal. That was an outstanding game. That was the first. Is that the first loss for Wittenberg, or had they gone down late in the year? I can't remember.
I think that was their first loss.
Yeah, and then beat St. Croix Central, the 1 seed in the top part of that bracket. So Mosinee, I guess, would be the Cinderella of that group, but not so much when you look at what they've done this year, playing in a bigger conference, playing in a great Northern Conference that's mostly D2 and D3 schools, whereas a team like Wittenberg-Burnhamwood's playing a lot of Division 4 teams during the course of the season. So some of that strength of schedule and strength of division of your schedule came into play a little bit, I think there. So Mosinee comes out and takes care of business to get the job done and move on to a state tournament. But not a ton of intrigue in some of those games either. The Dells had a close one in that sectional final, but probably their win over Aquinas and the way they dominated was one of the more impressive results that we have seen in Division Three this year. Of course, outside of Oostburg beating up on everybody that they've played, including Arrowhead and others.
Yeah. We had to D4 where the games were, in comparison to the first 3 divisions, they were a lot closer, especially those to -1 in the sectional sectional finals, but the other 3 sectional final games were pretty close in comparison to what we had in D1 through D4. Trav, give us a rundown on D4 here in sectional play.
Well, Neilsville took care of business as the 2 seed in their bracket, and then ended up as a 1 seed in the state tournament, which is, of course, interesting. It shows the quality of play that they ran into during the course of their tournament run. And then we got an overtime game in the sectional final between St. Mary Catholic and Kewanee. I tried to go back and watch that one. It was behind the paywall, so I didn't get a chance to to see how that one unfolded. But it was a 2-point game in overtime. So that was about the closest game I think that we got at the sectional final level over there in sectional two. Sectional one, some competitive games, not one seeds advanced. Lamira is a 3 seed coming out of their group, and then Albany Monticello coming out is a 2 seed in their group, where they were able to take down top seeded Deerfield. They knocked off Partyville in the sectional final. In their back at state, and they're another team that has been elevated. They are in their enrollment is D5. They made it to state a couple times and elevated to Division 4. They appealed and were denied last year. I expect they'll probably appeal again because they will stay up in Division 4. And maybe that's something we can hit on a little later, is kind of where things are at with performance factor and some teams that are either going to move up on the cusp of moving up, going to be staying up, how that plays out. But yeah, we got a few competitive games though, and even Neilsville. I mean, their game against Regis obviously was very close. Their game against Cameron was competitive, and then of course the overtime game with Kewanee and St. Mary Catholic, and a competitive game with Elmira beating Kenosha St. Joseph as well.
Yeah, looking at D5, we've got a Dairyland team, a Six Rivers team, a Central Wisconsin team, and a Trailways team, all making it to state this year. Give us a rundown. It seems like if you look at that sectional 3, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. That Pacelli Columbus Catholic game seemed to be kind of the deciding factor on who might make it to state, as Pacelli kind of cruised in the sectional play to get to the state tournament.
Yeah, jumping ahead to Division 5 now. Let me pull that up quick here. All right, yeah. So Pacelli's the 1 seed. They did advance. Had a competitive game, very competitive 1-point game with Columbus Catholic just to get where they did. Had a competitive game, or had a game against a solid Almond Bancroft team, and then it was a little bit easier road in that sectional final against a Florence team that was very good, but comes out of a conference that's not quite at the same level as they see week in and week out. So yeah, they kind of cruise through. Fall River is kind of the surprise team to come out of their group. They're a 2 seed, but their sectional wasn't all that great. They haven't played a 1 seed yet. The 1 seed in their group was Chesterton Academy, who went out early. The 1 seed on the top part of that bracket was Sheboygan Lutheran, who got knocked off by Lourdes Academy. So Fall River coming in at 17-11, really kind of the biggest surprise team, I think, out of all of the qualifiers across all the divisions. Now, that's a program that's been there before. Has experience on the coaching staff and at the coaching level and in the program. We've got a great band, by the way, which is going to be one of the fun things for Friday morning. The Fall River Band rocking things out. And if you're looking at a surprise team, it's them. But at the same time, that sectional did not have the depth necessarily that we saw in some of the other ones. So they're able to make it through. We've got Oliva Strum, of course, as an undefeated team. Didn't have too many troubles in their group, as we saw. And Barneveld really, I think had the toughest path in their coming out of their group. They took down Argyle Pecatonica for the second time in just a week or a couple weeks in a sectional semifinal. And that one, was a 17-point game. So they controlled that one pretty well. And then the sectional final was a great game going back and forth with Independence Gilmanton. Again, I was there at Mauston High School. Low scoring game. Both teams, had long stretches where it was hard to find the bottom of the net. Really good defense and just not finishing the way they would like to. But Isabel Durst really willed them through, made some plays, scoring the ball, distributing the ball, and allowed them to close that one out as they beat Independence Gilmanton 38-34. Very competitive game. Jim Myers back at the state tournament for, what did I say? I just looked it up. I think the 13th time that he's taken them to state. Doug Pickards was the head coach one of the years that Barneveld went to state. But otherwise, Jim Myers has been there for the other times. He became the all-time winningest girls basketball coach earlier. I think it was earlier this year. He, won a state title as a boys coach when he went over and coached the boys side a couple years. Unfortunately, a tough year for Coach Myers as his wife had passed away um, earlier this year. So it's been a kind of a roller coaster for him. But he's got Barneveld back playing for a state tournament and playing in the state tournament, playing for a state title, which is a very familiar place for the Golden Golden Eagles. Some experience on the bench. Former Inger Hodgson, who was played at state a couple of times, is an assistant coach there, and yeah, just a lot of storylines out of that Barneveld program.
Yeah, shifting gears now. State tournament. We start Thursday with two afternoon sessions, Division Three and Division Four. Friday morning will be the first session of D5 semis, followed by D2 semis, followed by D1 semis, and then Saturday we'll have all five championship games up at the Rush Center in Appleton. Um, usually in years past, well, in most years, it feels like we have one conference at least that has one or more teams. This year, at least on the girls' side, there's going to be two Six Rivers teams, in one in D4 and one in D5, and then on the girls' side, there's going to be two Big East teams, one in D3 in Oostburg and one in D4 in St. Mary Catholic. Trav, let's look at the D5 field first to start with, and we'll work our way up.
Let's start D3 because that's the first games that will get
Okay.
underway
Yeah.
on Thursday with semifinal action. And I think it's been a few years since the WI switched the schedule. It used to be D5, then D4 on that Thursday, D3, D2, D1 on Friday. It's been a while, but I think it's a good move. It brings in a little bit bigger crowds to the Resch Center and the Cole Center for the boys on that Thursday. And it should be a really fun afternoon session for Division Three. It will be really well attended. Oostburg is very close and brings a lot to the state tournament. Again, that idea of them potentially being the best team in the state, I think, will be a draw. Kettle Moraine Lutheran's not very far away either. I guess a little bit down the road towards the Milwaukee area, but that eastern side of the state. The Dells will have a ton of people there. Have seen that all year and saw that in the sectional play. In Mosinee, a team that hasn't been there, kind of a newbie, should bring a good crowd as well. So it should be a great environment on Thursday to kick things off with that Division Three field. And I think a lot of storylines in Division Three. Again, Oostburg undefeated, looking to cap off an undefeated season. There's still a lot left for Oostburg in that younger group, but this is not the last time we're going to see them be a player. But the kind of the last go around with all the Ketterhagens together. So you've got them as the one seed taking on a Mosinee team that again played a bigger schedule than some of the teams they saw in their sectional, but it will be a little bit of a different story, obviously, when we get to the state tournament. Oostburg's strength of schedule, right up there with most anybody, especially in the non-conference. Beat Arrowhead, beat a whole host of teams during the course of the year. Notre Dame, a state qualifier. Whitefish Bay, a state qualifier. Beaver Dam, a state qualifier. Arrowhead, state qualifier. Pewaukee, state qualifier. I mean, their non-conference schedule was as good as anybody's. And Mosinee did not necessarily see that level of play during the course of the year. So we'll see how the Indians can handle kind of that blitzkrieg that may come at them from Oostburg. And then the one that maybe will be more competitive is that 2-3 matchup, which the Devils is probably going to use that as a little bit of motivation, to be honest, to be undefeated and get a 3 seed. But ultimately, it doesn't matter if you're a 2 or a 3. There's no different there. Kettle Moraine Lutheran certainly has played a tougher schedule, but I tell you, having seen the Dells in person for the first time over the weekend, they can play, and they've got good talent up and down the roster. They've got good size. They've got a freshman that's a strong contributor. Asia Gall led them in scoring, I believe, in that sectional final game against Edgerton. But Natalie Backus, Shia Hopkins are senior leaders and again, good talent elsewhere. So I think that has a chance to be a really, really great game between Kettle Moraine Lutheran and Wisconsin Dells. And of course, Kettle Moraine Lutheran, no stranger to getting to state, but this is a different group. than what we saw for a few years there with Mackenzie Luring and that group. But Coach Wall's right back at it with a really strong season. So really liking what we can see in that second game.
Yeah, you hop down then. The evening session on that Thursday will be the D4 semifinals. One seed is Neilsville. Lomira comes in as the 4 seed, so that'll be game one, followed by 2 seed St. Mary Catholic and 3 seed Albany Monticello. I say it that way because TJ was, he's like, it's Monticello. I'm like, I know it's Monticello. I just like to mispronounce stuff sometimes to make Trav upset. But now I just did it on accident.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, it's always on accident. You're trying to do it. Yeah, right.
Albany
Um,
Monticello. Uh, you know, I think it's really important in these 2-3 matchups in D3 and D4 kind of shed light on that. Getting that 1 seed is kind of important. These 2 and 3 seed matchups, especially in D3 and D4, they're going to be bangers, so to speak.
yeah, they will. Neilsville is the 1 seed again. They were not the 1 seed even in their own group, but they played a tough schedule to get here. Regis taking them out, I think really boosted them in terms of that seeding process. If you look at the Bound Power Index, Neilsville is number 1 in Division 4. St. Mary Catholic is 5. Albany Monticello is 6. And then Lomira is a little bit of an outlier from the power index perspective. They were 22 or come in 22-6, but they're 17th in Division 4 in the Bound Power Index. One thing to watch for, it could be a little bit of a slugfest with Neilsville and Lomira. Both those teams kind of slow it down a little bit, play a little slower pace, average in the mid to upper 50s. Of course, we just saw Neilsville play some really low scoring games along the way. They scored 42 points in the sectional final, 40 points in the sectional semifinal, and 47, in fact, in a regional final. So they're not afraid to take the air out of the ball. They play really, really good defense. They've allowed 23 points in the sectional semifinal and then 30 points in the sectional final. So that could be a defensive battle. Lomira doesn't score it a ton either. A little bit more up and down, a little bit more scoring potentially in that second game with St. Mary Catholic and Albany Monticello. Both teams are over 60 points a game. St. Mary Catholic likes to fill it up with Autumn Crow, who we talked about a number of times this season. Outstanding junior. I'll reiterate it. No relation to Mickey Crow, who is a legend up in that area. So that one might be a little more up and down. But again, some interesting matchups there in Division 4.
One thing of note, while we're sitting here talking about the girls' matchups that are happening, has there been a 30-point winner in girls basketball since we've gone to 24 games?
30-game winner?
30-game winner.
I'm pretty sure there has.
Last year there was not.
Keep going as I look it up.
Okay. Morning session on Friday, that very next session, is your D5 matchups. Oliva Strum, they come in as an undefeated 29-0 Oliva Strum. They will take on 4-seed Fall River. Pacelli is the 2-seed, and they will take on 3-seed Barneveld.
Yeah. As we look at this field, again, Oliva Strum comes in undefeated. Have not had a lot of competitive games, to be honest with you. Their average margin of victory this year is almost 30 points a game. They won by 20 in sectional play. They won by 24 in a sectional semifinal. They haven't been challenged a lot this year, and they score it though. They average 65 points a game. They've got we've talked about a few times this year, I think, in some of our write-ups. Avery Glenn's a junior that is their leading scorer, and the top 3 scorers are juniors. In fact, a pretty young group that we could see back here at state potentially a few different times. At 29-0, they've got a chance to go 31-0, which I think would be the first time that's happened.
I'm looking at it now. 2022, Mineral Point went 30-0 to win the D4. Randolph in D5 went 31-0
All
to
right,
win
so
it.
it has happened before, but something that it was not too common. Um, and then the you know Fall River again is kind of that Cinderella type team. Um, 17-11. They're sectional, certainly not the strength of the other sectionals. So we'll see where that kind of comes into play. If you look at the bound power index, they're down a good ways now. That hasn't impacted their ability to get here to a state tournament, but they're 24th in the bound power index. Again, coming in at 17-11. So they were what 13-11 during the regular season, I think. Um, so they're the one that kind of stands out from that perspective. And then that second game with Pacelli and Barneveld. Barneveld's a 3 seed. I would maybe if I'm just looking at the order that I would put the teams, I'd probably put them at least second. Again, the way that they have played late in the year, taking down Argyle Pecatonica twice late in the season, taking down a very good Independence Gilmanton team in sectional play. It would not surprise me one bit to see Jim Myers work his magic, get them to a state tournament, or excuse me, state title game and win it potentially. So they're the 3 seed. Again, it doesn't matter 2 versus 3. At this point, I probably wouldn't put them lower than second though, in terms of who I think is most likely to win it all. Pacelli's played well, obviously all season. Late in the year, they've had some competitive games against some very good teams. Their losses are Aquinas, St. Mary Catholic, who's at state in D4, Mosinee, who's at state in D3, and those were competitive. That was a competitive game with Mosinee. And then they lost to Wittenberg Burnhamwood, who was undefeated in the regular season in a competitive game. So again, they played good teams. They have a good group. We talked about that. What was that? The Columbus Catholic game, where just a wild finish in that one. We didn't even. I
Yeah,
guess we didn't get into that. Maybe we should.
we did.
Um,
Last
um,
week we did.
last week, okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, a wild one against Columbus Catholic in that regional game. But Jaden's Droik, Ella Van Order kind of lead the way for them. They do have 4 double-digit scores, so should be a good one with them in Barneveld. But again, I would not be surprised if Barneveld continues this late postseason run and maybe takes home another gold ball for Coach Myers.
Hopping into that afternoon session, D2, 1 seed Rice Lake, 4 seed Beaver Dam, 2 seed Whitefish Bay, and 3 seed Elkhorn. Now, before we get into this, these teams have to be thrilled that Wauwatosa East, Notre Dame, and Pewaukee are up in D1, because those 3 teams that are now in D1 and at the D1 state tournament are responsible for the last 5 Division II state championships in girls basketball. The 4 before that were won by Beaver Dam, or the 3 before that were won by Beaver Dam. So we haven't, between those 4 schools, we haven't had a state tournament champion not named Beaver Dam, Wauwatosa East, Pewaukee, or Notre Dame in D2 since 2016.
It's a new crop of teams. This is the division that I think has maybe the most unpredictability. It's
agree.
kind of been the most unpredictable division all year. There has not been that single dominant team like we've seen in the other divisions. The seeding itself, I think, was probably the most competitive and could have gone either way with a lot of these. In fact, I posted this yesterday, I guess it would have been, that the bound power index, what those seedings would have been using the bound power index. And it matched up with all the other divisions, I believe, perfectly. Division 2 was the outlier, though. In the bound power index, Whitefish Bay was number 1 with Rice Lake the 2, whereas that's reversed in the WIAA. And then Beaver Dam ahead of Elkhorn in the bound power index. But all of them were pretty close together. Rice Lake getting a 1 seed, hard to argue against it. I probably would have gone Whitefish Bay if it was, a human vote based on the schedule that Whitefish Bay played. I think it was a little deeper and stronger overall. But looking at that first game, with Rice Lake and Beaver Dam, obviously Adeline Shepley, a big draw, hopefully for people that want to watch one of the elite players in the state, a player that's going to be going to to Madison to play for the Wisconsin Badgers. And then a very good individual player on the other side, Natalia Donaldson, set the Beaver Dam, scoring career scoring record at a program that's had multiple scholarship Division I players. And Beaver Dam played a tough schedule this year, so that's not going to be an easy one. And again, I think it sets up potentially 1 versus 4 for the best, one of the best matchups. And then Whitefish Bay and Elkhorn is going to be outstanding as well. Whitefish Bay played a great schedule. Elkhorn played a solid schedule. I can't remember if these teams had played. They did not play during the regular season, but just really competitive games that we should hopefully see in Division II, where again the most kind of unpredictable from a seeding perspective, and even looking at who are you going to pick, right? I think I should have pulled this up. I think I picked Whitefish Bay before the playoffs started, maybe even Whitefish Bay over Rice Lake, but there's if you're looking at confidence picks, that's probably the division where I would have the least confidence picking who's going to win.
Yeah, and when you have a division like this where there isn't necessarily that one or two teams that you think will make it, that can make for a really fun 3 games in that division at the Rush. So D2, watch out. That might be the division that, with regards to just close games and maybe a little bit of wildness, that might be the one that steals the show up at Green Bay this week. D1, final division. It's that evening session on Friday. 1 seed is undefeated Wauwatosa East. 4 seed is Notre Dame. 2 seed is Arrowhead. 3 seed is Pewaukee. Now, if you're a basketball junkie and you love basketball and you want to see the best teams play at state, this is a pretty good representation of that.
Absolutely. These are the 4 top teams in Division I in the Bound Power Index. These are the top 4 that have made it to state. All have, again, great stories. 3 of them moving up from Division II, where they had a lot of success. You've got Arrowhead is a behemoth in Division I in every sport. All these teams have been at state before. There's just so many storylines out of all of these, and hopefully sets up for some really strong competitive games in Division I. Even Tosa East as a top seed taking on Notre Dame should be a great game. You're looking at 2 of the best coaches, first and foremost, in the state of Wisconsin, and Mary Merg and Sarah Rohde, and absolutely 2 of the best female coaches in the state, in great representation and great representatives of women and females in high school sports. Both are very involved in a lot of different things. Coach Rohde does a lot with the WBCA on some of the committees and selection committees, and Coach Merg as well. And obviously Coach Merg is a great advocate for girls basketball. And again, we had a great conversation with her earlier this year. So then you look at Arrowhead and Pewaukee. Arrowhead been to the state tournament a couple years ago. Natalie Cuso led them to a state title as a sophomore. She's going to Minnesota, arguably the top player in the state. You've got another Ms. Basketball finalist in Giselle Janowski on the other side, looking to cap off her career, looking to make up for lost time after having missed a good part of her career with injury. In Pewaukee, again, getting back with a little different group without the Terrians than what they had made it to state in one state a few times, or just a few years ago. So, tons of storylines in Division I. You've got strong programs. 3 of them from the Milwaukee area, which is interesting. 3 of them moving up from Division II, which is interesting. All 3 on the eastern side of the state, which hopefully will mean some good attendance at the girls' state tournament, and should set up for some really fun games. And kind of just generally, right? If we're looking at the girls' basketball state tournament, just like the boys, we've seen a little bit of a decline in state attendance the last few years, over the last 5 years or so since COVID, really. With the matchups we have, with the teams that we have, many of them, fairly close by, or at least on the eastern side of the state, maybe there's not as many Fox Valley teams as sometimes there would be. But, hopefully we're going to get a really strongly attended girls basketball state tournament, which, by the way, we haven't mentioned and need to, the 50th WIAA girls basketball state tournament There will be a number of displays. There will be some recognitions. There will be all kinds of stuff going on to celebrate the 50th WIAA Girls Basketball State Tournament, the very first one held back in 1976. So, the WI is making a push to bring in youth teams and have youth players on the floor. I believe at halftime is an experience that's available. They're going to recognize some of the greats and legendary people, coaches, players, administrators in girls basketball at different times during the state tournament. All those things hopefully will lead to a great experience and a great atmosphere and a well attended event, because there have been some sessions in the last couple of years that, even the Resch Center being a little bit smaller has still felt a little a little empty at times. So we'll see how everything plays out, but the hope is all those things lead to a really outstanding 50th WIAA Girls Basketball State Tournament.
I 100% agree. We'll have Trav. You'll have state previews coming out this week. Again, that tournament, it's 3 days of it's the culminating showcase of the basketball that we have in our state on the girls' side. Green Bay is extremely welcoming up there. The atmosphere is awesome. So if you can get there, if you can't, make sure to watch on TV. But I mean, there's going to be a lot of really, really, really good basketball played that Thursday through Saturday up in Green Bay.
Yeah, and that's something that I think is good to highlight too. It is incredibly welcoming there at the Resch Center. They do a great job, just the Green Bay Convention Bureau in general, of making it feel like a great event, not only at the Resch Center, but around town.
Yep.
And of course, being right there next to Lambeau Field, there's a lot of opportunities for people to take in, some pregame action at Stadium View or Anduzzi's or the bar or wherever else you want to. You can check out Lambeau Field. There's a lot that is going on right down there for people that maybe haven't been there. If your team has not been a part of that state tournament before, definitely check it out. It's a good atmosphere and a good location to hold that. With all of the walkable places that you can go, and whether it's the Pro Shop or again Kroll's or some of the other places, really cool atmosphere. So highly recommend that people check it out if they can.
Yeah. We're going to switch gears. We're going to hop over to the boys. We had regionals are now over with after regional final Saturday was yesterday. So we're going to kind of break this down division by division, go through it, talk about maybe some of the storylines, some upset teams, some division or some conferences that are having some success throughout these playoffs. But we're going to hop into this boys regional now. Starting in D1. The FVA kind of flexed their muscle a little bit. I think I saw Mark tweet that in a supposed down year of the FVA, they still got 4 teams in to the sectionals. And actually the only section or the only regional final loss that came out of the FVA was Kimberly losing to Appleton North. You had a pair of lower seeds. And again, these lower seeds, they look a lot lower than what they are in D1 because they seed the whole sectional. So whereas in D2 or D3, these might be, a 4 or 5 seed, they're a 9 and 10 seed come D1.
Yeah, and I don't know who said the FVA was down this year necessarily either.
Individually, talent-wise, it was a little bit. There's usually 4 or 5 D1 kids in it, and it was down a touch. It compared to where it has been is maybe more on the individual talent side of things.
Perhaps, and maybe there wasn't a dominating team, which there isn't a lot of times either in the FVA. I mean, this is what trip. Nina's going for, I think, their 4th trip to state in the last 5 or 6 years, and only one of those years were they really the favorite. They entered 26-1 the one year. Otherwise, they've had 8, 9, 11 losses to make it to state. So the depth of the FVA, I don't think, is necessarily any different than it's been, other than the Appleton schools are a little bit, east and west anyway, are down a little bit from where they have been in the past, although not necessarily the recent past. But Appleton North, I mean, is much improved. Even Fond du Lac, they didn't have a great record, but we saw that they could do some things. So um, I don't know. It's still a great conference. I
Yeah.
don't know that I would call it down.
Nina, you touched on it. 9 seed. They beat the 1 seed DC Everest in the regional final on Saturday night. A game that a lot of people had kind of picked to go that way. DC Everest plays in the Wisconsin Valley. Marshfield and Stevens Point, two very good teams, but as far as depth of how a conference is, it doesn't quite touch what the FVA is. And then in sectional 2, you had 7 seed Oshkosh North, who has been playing just absolute phenomenal basketball as of late. They had a they had a semifinal matchup with a Bayport team that again was really really talented out of the FRCC. They won that one by 18, and then they took down the Classic 8 champ Arrowhead in the regional final. So you have a 10 seed Oshkosh North, a 9 seed Nina advancing, and then you also have Kaukauna and Appleton North in D1. Other than that, you have a lot of your De Pere is back. They were pretty dominant in the regional go through. Marshfield is there again. I was surprised and wasn't surprised at the Wausau West over Superior game. I did not get to see if Calvin Anderson played for Superior in that 11-6 matchup. And then you've got a Brook East team who is in the sectionals playing out of the Greater Metro, which is, as we know, one of the better conferences in the state. That's sectional 1 and 2. Sectional 3 and 4. Sectional 3, we're getting basically an old Big 8 round table. Madison Memorial advances as the 1, Middleton is the 5, Verona advances as the 3, and then Beloit Memorial, who was a Big 8 school member, was it 2 years ago? Was last year their first year in the Southern Lakes?
Yeah, just within the last couple of years they moved out.
Beloit Memorial advances.
Almost
Storylines.
wasn't that way. I mean, Madison Memorial went into double overtime with Badger.
Badger, talk about a team that was just a team playing. I mean, they pushed Waterford and Beloit Memorial this year. They won in OT on a Friday night in Kettle Moraine, and then they pushed the top seed Madison Memorial in 2 overtimes.
Yeah, and again, like you said, a good showing for the Big 8. Now, as we talked about, I think in our preview, some of the teams that had given the Big 8 trouble in the playoffs have been moved out of that sectional to an extent. I mean, Kettle Moraine was still in there. We saw them represent that sectional a couple of times recently. But still, again, a good showing for the Big 8 that has not had the greatest postseason success the last few years. It would be wild if this year that we're thinking the Big 8 might finally have that success and a breakthrough to state, if Beloit Memorial is the team that ends up coming out of that group, a former Big 8 school that would then be essentially going through the entire Big 8. They already beat Madison East. They already beat Madison La Follette. They play Verona in a sectional semifinal, and then it would be another Big 8 team in a sectional final. So that would be kind of wild if that were to happen.
Does the Big 8 just get to kind of pseudo claim that one?
I'm sure there's some that will.
Hereford started as a Big 8 player during his freshman year. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, absolutely, you could see it happening with the way Beloit Memorial is playing. They've won 12 or 14 games in a row. Mari Hereford is just on a incredible run right now. Again, not only scoring at a high level, but scoring at a very efficient level. And I think I read or saw something. One of the Badger guys, I don't know if it was Evan Flood or John McNamara or who it was, said that there was maybe a little bit of attention from Wisconsin late here in the process for Amari Hereford. Doesn't sound like that's probably going to come together, but again, just goes to show the kind of senior year that he has been able to put together. And he's the kind of kid that you could see coming back to a Wisconsin at some point. I mean, getting a year or two and maybe coming back. So,
a few teams that, or a few conferences that. Well, let's look at that 4 sectional before I hop into this. Let me ask
you in sectional 4. Obviously, the big story is West Allis Central going down to Muskego. So my question is, how big of a surprise is that? Without Yusef Gray, I think it's the biggest surprise this year, period, in boys basketball. Is it, or is it not as big a surprise given Gray being out?
I still think it is. I mean, you're still talking about a West Dallas Central team that's got 3 or 4 scholarship kids on it. Um,
In a Muskego team that hadn't exactly shown this level of ability. I mean, they were what, a distant fifth or something in the Classic 8, which was not, a great league this year. They were under 500 in conference. They were what, 11-12 or 12-12 during the regular season, whatever it
yeah,
was. They hadn't really shown this. Now they had a lot of close games. Like if you look at their losses, even their losses to Arrowhead, they played a lot of really close games this year. But I think 3 or 4 by 1 point even. But still not something that I don't think probably should have happened if we're being honest, right?
not
Um,
something that I would have predicted. Not something that I think anyone maybe outside of Muskego would have been predicting. Yeah, that was the first game that went final actually on Saturday too. So it kind of was just like, holy cow, shocker.
yeah. So now it sets up a scenario where Wisconsin Lutheran was a favorite no matter what. When Gray goes out, they become a prohibitive favorite in to come out of their sectional. And now with West Dallas Central out of the way in the domination that Wisconsin Lutheran has shown, I mean
Trav, they
they
were
were
up 48-4 at half
I know
of a
against
regional championship game.
An Oak Creek team that's not bad.
No,
Um, an Oak Creek team that finished, what were they, above
second,
500 in the Classic 8.
second, I believe,
Yeah,
right?
tied for second with Kettle Moraine. So I mean, it all sets up to that Wisconsin Lutheran is as strong of a favorite to come out of a sectional as perhaps we have ever seen.
Uh, they've given up 42 points in 2 playoff games. So not only are they, I mean, I could sit and watch Wisco play just as a sports junkie and loving to see like efficient basketball. They are so efficient on the offensive side and defensively. I mean, it's just fundamentally so sound.
Well, let's wrap up our Division One talk. Colton, I'm going to throw this at you. Give me the one game, if you could go to if you could pick any of the 8D1 sectional semifinals. Give me the one game that you would pick.
You know, just because it's 2 teams that maybe I might go to De Pere Germantown, a Khalil Jones that is a human highlight reel, and a De Pere team that has been there, done that quite a few times. They're all going to be great matchups, but 2 teams that I don't think they played this year. Um, check that quick.
I'll throw my pick out there. That's not a bad pick at all. I'd probably go Appleton North and Marshfield. Marshfield being a runner-up last year. Chris Pohl, outstanding player. I got a chance to see them perhaps at their best this year when they beat
Yeah,
Kaukauna at the Midwest Players Classic, and they'll take on an Appleton North squad, and that game's at Stevens Point, by the way. An Appleton North squad that's is has looked really good this year. Senior group that's been together, played together, built together. That might be the one that I would pick.
yeah. I mean the 2 in the Madison or in the Big Eight semifinal are going to be great as well, but they're kind of like opponents. So I did like that Germantown De Pere, just difference in matchups.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to Division Two, Colton, as we keep things moving along here. Sectional One, it's all about a couple of upsets, fours over ones. As you had New Richmond beating River Falls. I watched a little bit of the end of that one on Saturday. And then one of the bigger upsets, perhaps, West Salem, a good 4 seed, but goes and takes down top-ranked, top-seeded Onalaska. So we don't get that third matchup between Onalaska and La Crosse Central, as instead it'll be West Salem. So both 1 seeds go out in regional finals in Sectional One.
Yeah, the River Falls one I was not as surprised as the other one, simply because they split their season series. New Richmond had already beat them this year. The West Salem on Alaska one, I mean, I got to see West Salem from the coach's bench, and I got to see on Alaska at the NPC. This one surprised me simply for the fact that West Salem had a dog fight the night before with New London. It was a 1 point game, came down to the wire. On Alaska, they had a 15-point win over a Menasha team that, it was a little bit easier of a road. Um, on Alaska had beat West Salem by 15 before that, or 2 weeks ago. So, yeah, Coach Schmeling, um, I think Drew McConkey, he's the quarterback, right? He hit a turnaround with a few seconds left, and Onalaska actually had a really, really, really good look on an open corner three to give them the win, and it just didn't fall. But yeah, a little bit of a surprise there.
Looking at sectional 2, Notre Dame, West Appear, Port Washington, and Slinger. I mean, that Port Washington Slinger game has been one that people have been circling for a long time. Slinger lost to Port Washington early in the season, two of the top 5 teams, without a doubt, I think, in Division Two. That one will get a lot of attention, certainly. So let's talk about it. Give me your take on Port Washington Slinger.
It was a 1 point game, I think, at the that happened earlier in the year, and it happened really early in the year. I don't know if it was December or early January, but it was a game that happened earlier in the year, and Port Washington's only got one loss on the year. You do look at their scores; they have gotten a little closer, but that's a really, really good team. They were North Shore foes until this past year. Port Washington now being in the newly formed Glacier Trail. Slingers obviously got the Conan brothers. Port Washington's got a good senior group in Cal Luce. Grady Carrolls is in that. Um, Slinger is coming off a game that over a red hot Nicolay team. They've got that momentum behind them. So you look at games to go to on a Thursday night. That's got to be probably. I won't jump the gun. I won't jump the gun. I won't make that proclamation quite yet until you ask me after we finish that. But yeah, that Port Washington Slinger game is going to be a doozy. I I think I picked Slinger simply for the Conan effect and being able to close out those early games, but I think it's going to be a toss up.
Yeah, and impressive for Slinger to lock down in the defensively in the playoffs. What they've been able to
Yeah.
do, holding Kewaskum to 47, and then a good Nicolay team to 45. So they have really taken a step forward defensively this year. And then on the other game there, it's a rematch for Notre Dame and West Appear. Both they split that regular season series. So let's move on to sectional 3. Keep things rolling along. We talked about how this is a little bit of Milwaukee Suburbs versus Badger. And in the top part of that bracket, the Milwaukee Suburbs dominated. And we ended up getting New Berlin West and Tosa West in a sectional final. New Berlin West had a really impressive win over Brookfield Central in a regional final. Tosa West took down Beaver Dam in the other part. In the bottom part of that bracket, it's the Badger schools that advanced, as we kind of expected. There wasn't as strong of Milwaukee suburban teams down there. So you've got McFarland and Mount Horeb going for round 3. They split during the regular season. Of course, the first game was when Manchester got hurt and Mount Horeb got running clocked. And then the second game later in the year, Mount Horeb ended up beating McFarland. So as we look at this one, if you want to break down each one, go ahead. Or, what do we think of a potential? It's going to be a Badger team versus a suburban Milwaukee team in a sectional final, and how that might go.
Well, it didn't go well outside of the McFarland over Waukesha West in the bottom half. It didn't go well for the Badger teams at the top, with Sauk Prairie and Beaver Dam both losing to Brooks Central and Tosa West with regards to the higher seeded Badger teams. Tosa West has been pushed. I mean, we talked that Milwaukee Lutheran team is no joke, and it was a 4 point win by Tosa West. They were a little more impressive against Beaver Dam. That New Berlin West game is going to be awesome. McFarland and Mount Horeb have cruised. It's been 19 plus point victories in every game for these two squads. So that third matchup is going to be a really, really fun one to find. But yeah, that sectional final. If I were to choose, I'm picking the winner of New Berlin West and Tosa West to come out, simply because the teams that they play during the year are a little bit more in preparation for uh, the postseason push.
All right, let's wrap up Division Two with a look at Sectional Four. We've got Whitefish Bay versus Academy of Science on the top part of the bracket, and then Waterford against kind of the upstart in the division, Burlington, down in the bottom part of the bracket. What's our thoughts there?
Big ups to the Southern Lakes Conference. Advanced three teams to sectionals in Waterford, Burlington, and Beloit Memorial. Badger was a team that pushed, that Madison Memorial team to the brink in a regional final. So big ups to the Southern Lakes Conference getting three representatives in the sectional final. I do think, third time be the charm for Burlington with regards to Waterford? Maybe. If I'm a betting man, I would put it on Waterford, though. Both of the first two games were 9-point victories for Waterford. So it's not like they were blowouts. On the top half, you've got that science team that we've talked plenty about, the midseason forfeiture of wins, and then a Whitefish Bay team that has had two 20-point or two 18-plus point wins here in the playoffs. So I think that one could be really fun. I think we are looking at a possible 1v1 with regards to seeds, though.
All right. Division 3 as we move on. Sectional 1, we've got a rematch of a middle border conference game featuring St. Croix Central, the top seed, and Osceola, a 3 seed. Those two teams were part of a 3-way tie for top in the league, and those teams split their regular season matchups, with Osceola winning the most recent one, the regular season finale, in fact, to grab a share of that league championship. At the top part of that bracket, at the bottom part of the bracket, Stanley Boyd scored an upset win over top seeded Altoona, and then GET, a team that you saw in a regional final, taking on Stanley Boyd. Sectional 1, what are we thinking looking there?
On the top, it was middle border supremacy. They kind of have the Heart of Norse number for the most part when it comes to playoff time, and that was as evidenced here. In the bottom, I did get to go to that GET Mosinee game, and Mason Brown had a game. He had 35 points, I think 6 rebounds and 5 assists. He had 23 points in the second half. He took that game over and with the ball in his hand in the second half. I haven't even touched on how that game ended, but GET went up 3 with about 15 seconds left, missed the second of a double bonus. Mosinee gets the ball, pushing it down court, about 12, 13 seconds left now, and one of their players calls a timeout. The official awards it. Mosinee was out of timeouts. Technical foul was issued. GET also gets the ball back. So that's a Mosinee group that Coach Lindsay had a very senior dominant group, but you hate to see those moments happen. You really do. It took me back to that Columbus Catholic Pacelli game a little bit. So, but that was a heck of a game. As far as this one goes, Stanley Boyd's got Charlie Hall. I hope I'm saying his last name right, but he's playing phenomenal in that GET group. I mean, their leading scorer only had 9 in that win against Mosinee, so can still get it going.
Yeah, an unfortunate way to end that Mosinee game. I don't know if it's been any different than any other year, but have seen a few technical fouls or high-profile technical fouls, even in regional and even sectional games. There was one in the girls' game I was at on Saturday between Independence Gilmanton and Barneveld. There was a technical foul issued in that one. We saw a coach get ejected earlier in the playoffs on the boys' side. Pressure ramps up. Some people handle it in a good way. Some people it creates that kind of environment. But all right, sectional 2, we've got that huge game that people have been anticipating. Sectional semifinal between Freedom and Seymour. Seymour lost late in the year to Oshkosh North, have that one defeat. Freedom has just one loss as well. Again, highly anticipated. And then at the bottom of the bracket, not to be forgotten, Brilliant, a very good team with a strong resume against Xavier, who always seems to make a nice run in the postseason. I mean, I'm not going to ask you what game you'd go to in D3 because I know it's probably going to be Freedom Seymour, but um, maybe give us at least the take on that side.
You know what really surprised me actually was that 4-5 matchup in the bottom half where a Winneconne team traveled to Little Chute to play, and Little Chute ended up winning 65-63. That was a Winneconne team that was averaging 80 plus points a game. So to be able to hold the Wolves to 63 and get that win, really good job on the Mustangs part. But yeah, Brilliant Xavier, that's going to be a great one. And then it's just a game that was circled, and both teams kind of they showed why that they're going to meet that in Freedom Seymour. So
All right. The other side of the bracket in Division Three, Sectional Three is a sectional you were in. You gave us a little bit of a sneak peek at that one with Lancaster going through, winning a couple competitive games, and then really not having a ton of problems with top seeded Mineral Point. And then we also got, I think, an upset on the other end of the spectrum there with Aquinas going down to Lodi in the first game for Aquinas as the defending champions. Now, I think we talked about it before, and I mentioned it probably as specifically. Lodi is a good team. For them to get a 7 seed in that group shows how deep and tough it was, and how Lodi maybe didn't have quite the season they would have expected. But again, playing in the Capital North Conference, they took some lumps against good teams. And then I was surprised to see, Lodi beats the defending champions and then follows it up and has a double-digit loss to a Platteville team. I thought maybe that was going to be Lodi saying, all right, this is our sectional, and it didn't be. So we've got Lancaster, Platteville, round 3. Did they split during the regular season?
I do believe so.
Okay.
Yeah,
Bottom
both
side of the
blowouts
bracket.
actually.
Yeah, bottom side of the bracket, we've got Lake Mills. Not too many problems so far. Watertown Luther Prep knocks off Lakeside Lutheran, and I think a surprising result there in a regional final.
Yeah, just to speak on the top half, when I was going through and deciding or trying to project who we were going to play, whatnot, projecting 3 through 8 was impossible. I had no idea who was going to fall out there. Dodgeville was a tip in away from beating Mineral Point in the regional semis. They lost by 1. Dodgeville had a chance to win it on putback, missed it. So just a lot of chaos in that top half. I do know that at the end of that Lodi Aquinas game, there was a scrum after a missed free throw, and Cale Schneider appeared to have got, I don't know if he suffered an injury or if he just got hurt. I didn't see if that affected anything in the Platteville game. I haven't been able to go back and check that film, but it would be interesting to know if that was the case. Platteville's been clicking here in the back half. Coach Huser's been doing a great job, but when you look at that bottom half, I mean, you're staring down a Lake Mills team that is a well-oiled machine.
All right, sectional 4 wraps things up. We've got Oostburg against Kettle Moraine Lutheran. I think should be a great game. That one is, by the way, moved to Wednesday because Kettle Moraine Lutheran and Oostburg have girls teams playing on Thursday at the state tournament. And then the bottom part of the bracket, we get that third triumvirate game. We're seeing Lutheran and we're seeing St. Catherine's, one of those ones that was circled as a potential outstanding sectional game even before the season started.
Yeah, Ralu St. Cat's is going to be a must watch as far as a basketball fan. Looking at the top half, a game that surprised me, maybe not by the outcome, but the margin of victory, was that Kettle Moraine Lutheran over Lake Country Lutheran. It was a 19-point win. Another game that I haven't gone and able to see if it was closer than what it was, but Lake Country Lutheran, that was the Midwest Classic champs, and Kettle Moraine Lutheran kind of ran away with that one. Oostburg, though, is going to be a heck of a matchup. They've got a really good squad. They've been ranked pretty highly all year, but man, imagine having to choose to go to whether it's Racine Lutheran, Racine St. Cat's, or Freedom Seymour on that Thursday. Ugh.
Yeah, it's a tough one. All right, Division 3, great games. Let's move on to Division 4, where we start to get into a little bit more, maybe a few upsets with some one seeds going down, especially in Sectional 1. McDonald Catholic will take on Clear Lake. The top seed in Sectional 1 lost their first game. Colfax went down to Prairie Farm Clayton in a 1-point game. And then the bottom part of that bracket, we've got Durand, Arkansas, who beat Fall Creek in a nail biter. That was a 1-point game. Uh, Fall Creek had an opportunity at the end. Shot did not fall for them. And then Regis, still alive, still averaging over 90 points a game, 95 points a game, in fact, in their 2 playoff games. A couple of the one seeds have gone down, which opens things up in Sectional 1.
Yeah, in that Colfax Prairie Farm Clayton game, uh, Clayton student Dane Mum hit that game winner, and I think he ended up this year as the school's all time leading scorer. So uh, big win, 9-1 there. That's a young Colfax team though. McDonald Central, I kind of figured they'd go on a run here, being that drop down effect. And we talked about how at the bottom, the Dun St. Croix champion Durand, Arkansas, was in the bottom half. 2 through 4 in the Dun St. Croix were in the top half. So Dun St. Croix or Durand, Arkansas was the DSC champ. They take down a Fall Creek. You don't get that third matchup between Regis, but just something to go back to in that Regis win over Luther. Blake Grisler put up 56 in that. 56 points in a regional final game is wild.
Yeah, incredible performance. Again, they're hitting on all cylinders so far, and we'll see if that continues against Durand, Arkansas. Sectional 2, Marathon will take on Hurley, who was an overtime winner over Auburndale. Bottom part of the bracket, Kewanee and Bonduel is a really good group, a really good game down there in Sectional 2.
Yeah, it was a little bit of chalk in this one. I picked against Hurley twice, and they proved me wrong twice. They do now get a marathon team that has kind of run roughshod over a lot of their opponents this year out of the Merriwood, a conference that did really well in the playoffs this year. But then you look at those regional finals, Kewanee St. Mary Catholic, that was a 9-point win. 2 teams that are really good in the northeast part of the state. And then Iola Scandinavia Bonduel. Bonduel squeaked by, got the third win in that series between Central Wisconsin rivals. Um, Bonduel's, they made the run to the state championship game last year. Now they got to go through an undefeated Kewanee team to get there again.
And in our bound power rankings, Kewanee is number 1 in Division 4. Bonduel's number 4 in Division 4. So that is a high level matchup in a sectional semifinal, on par with some of those other we've talked about in other divisions.
Yeah.
Moving on to Sectional 3 in Division 4, Darlington not really challenged so far as a 1 seed in the top part. Cambridge, a couple nice wins in the bottom part. And then, as a 2 seed there. Bottom part of the bracket, it'll be Lomira and Partyville. That game will be on Wednesday at Portage, with, again, Lomira girls playing at the state tournament.
Yeah, that top half I think is Darlington's to get. I think we in sectional 3, dominant all year, dominant come playoff time. In the bottom half, I talked to TJ about that game with Partyville. That might be a whole conversation for a different episode. What happened in that was a little bit wild.
Another game
that
with
came out of it.
technicals, right?
It sure was. I'll let the dust settle on that, and we can revisit it here maybe in the off season. On the other side, though, a Roncalli team that I know that Cowley did not play that first playoff game. I believe I don't know if he's played the second game, but he's back and playing. That's a very dangerous Roncalli team. And at the bottom, Cedar Grove, Belgium. I don't know how many. I picked them over Dominican. I'm not sure how many did, but that's a group that, again, last year made a run to the state tournament out of, I don't know if it was out of this sectional or not. But now they get to go up against the quote unquote juggernaut in D4 in Milwaukee Juno.
All right, that wraps up Division 4. Let's look at Division 5, starting in the top part of the bracket. Turtle Lake moves on. Maybe a little bit closer game than you would have expected against Frederick. They'll take on Drummond. And then it's Rib Lake as the number 1 seed. Loyal lost their first game to Owen Withy, and then Rib Lake took care of Owen Withy. So Rib Lake will play Prentice. So a couple Marywood Conference teams, and then a couple. I guess Drummond is out of the Indian, or the Northern Lights, but Sectional 1, especially the bottom part of that bracket, a couple non-1 and 2 seeds still going.
Yeah, the Clover Belt East, co-champs and Loyal and Columbus Catholic, I thought we're on a collision course for that third matchup, but we get a Marywood matchup. Marywood they split with the Clover Belt in the first two levels of the playoffs, but come the regional final game, the Marywood flex their muscles, and you're getting a Rib Lake Prentice matchup at the bottom. In the top half, in that Turtle Lake, in that victory, or no, it was the Stone Springs game where Brandon Wagner had a monster 34-15. Um, he's a kid that we've talked about it in D5, similar to Tigerton with James Brady. You get a big like that can take over games. That's a big time difference maker, and Brandon Wagner is a difference maker in Division 5.
Speaking of Tigerton, they beat Newman Catholic, which I think, beating a 5 seed by 14 points is a unbeaten 1 seed. Maybe you look at that in a vacuum and that's not super impressive, but considering that was by far the toughest challenge I think that they've had all year, with a Newman Catholic team that didn't have a great record. They came in under 500, but plays a much tougher conference. So maybe a little bit of Tigerton showing what they could do, and I think that's great experience for them as they move forward. Tigerton will play Wabeno Leona, and then the bottom part of that bracket is Reedsville versus Elkhart Lake Glen Beulah. A couple of Big East teams squaring off.
Yeah, Big East had a really good showing here in Division 3 through 5. They have 6 regional titles in that conference this year, so that's most of any conference in the state. Reedsville, though, has just been roughshod. They've been pretty dominant. They played an 8 seed Lords team that I thought would give them a better game than what they did, and they ended up winning that one by 27. So they have a matchup with Elkhart. That top, you got a Tigerton team. You talked about it. James Brady, he's got shooters around him. Wabeno Leona's, they've got 3,000-point scores. I think you're going to look at this one. That top matchup's going to be pretty solid. I think Reedsville might. I don't think it'll be as dominating as they have been, but they've played this Elkhart team twice, I think, already this year. And let me just bring.
Yep, twice.
And
first time was a 38-point win. Second time was a little closer, 14-point win. But how about Elkhart Lake, Glen Beulah? They were 3-9 in conference.
Yeah,
3-9 in conference, and they have been now, 15-0 outside of the Big East North. That's a pretty wild discrepancy. It goes to show the talent or the quality of that Big East North.
Yeah, and then they get to play a Big East North foe here in that sectional semi.
Yeah. All right. Last stretch here as we move to Division 3 Sectional 3 of Division 5. Royal, the top seed, was upset by Assumption in a regional final, so Assumption will play Cochrane Fountain City, the defending state champions in Division 5. And then the bottom part of the bracket, North Crawford holds on against a Belmont squad that was really strong towards the end of the year. Southwestern will take on North Crawford as they took care of one of those Ridge and Valley powers, Kickapoo, in a regional final. Coach Clint Nemitz, his run continues into sectional play again. I can't remember how many years in a row this is for Southwestern as they are looking to continue on, again, taking on another Ridge and Valley team, which, as we talked about, the Six Rivers and Six Rivers and Swall have traditionally, even throwing the Scenic Bluffs there, have caused a lot of problems for the Ridge and Valley. We saw that in the Kickapoo game. North Crawford did hang on to their end of the bargain against Belmont, but now I think a really tough matchup for North Crawford in a sectional game.
Yeah. Southwestern, I think the last 2 years they've spent in that sectional 4. so they've actually been out of the sectional with the Ridge and Valley and Six Rivers squad, but came to hometown Kickapoo and took care of business. Now Crawford and Southwestern have played already this year. Crawford had a 20-point win back in early January. Teams are way different since then. Playoffs are way different. It's just a totally different game. At the top, Assumption, Coach Paltz, he's got two playmakers in JT Schlafer and Logan Nystrom that can really get it going. They defend really well, but they get to come up against that Cochran Fountain City team, who even last year wasn't talked about quite like they were and made a run to state. So I wonder if the bleach blonde hair is back, and I wonder if the Pirates are looking to get back to the Kohl Center with another sectional couple wins.
Last sectional, Division 5, Sectional 4, Abundant Life Christian will take on Barneveld. And then the other side, it'll be Oakfield and Sheboygan Lutheran in that one. So, Oakfield has been there at that level. Sheboygan Lutheran, pretty dominating so far. I think pretty strong overall bracket there in Sectional 4 with strong teams in Sectional 4.
Yeah, I do like the two sectional semifinal matchups a lot. Abundant Life Christian has been to the state tournament back-to-back years. Barneveld has played really, really well out of the Six Rivers. I think East is the division that they're in. They've been pretty dominant here in the playoffs, taking care of Fall River, St. Ambrose, and Blackhawk in all three 20-point game. Abundant Life also dominant, maybe not quite as dominant. On the bottom half, Oakfield was challenged a little bit more than what I would have thought. Being the one seed and having the talent that they have back, Catholic Central was a 13-point game. Central Wisconsin Christian was a 10-point game. Boygan Lutheran is a juggernaut. We touched on this a little bit, but getting Zach Leonard back is huge for that Crusader squad. Nick Verhagen, Coach Verhagen's been to the state tournament. He's taken teams to the state tournament in the past 2 decades. So it's both should be really good matchups. Sheboygan Lutheran, though, it's going to be tough to not pick them to come out of it.
Yeah. All right. Well, that wraps up our look at the boys preview. Again, a couple games that were moved to Wednesday night. So make sure you keep those on the calendar. It gives an opportunity to get out to those games as well, and take in an extra one. So what else we got for the show today, Colton, as we wrap things up here in the next 5 minutes or so?
Just wanted to give a shout out to a couple guys that hit those milestones that we talk about in the playoffs. Marcus Cole out of Rochelle, Jed Henderson out of Rib Lake, and Jack Terrell out of Highland all hit the 1,000-point mark in the playoffs. I saw Dominic Baxter out of Peshtigo came 6 points shy of 2,000. Man, 6 points shy. Darn. A couple of school records that were broken. Jalen Miggins out of Marshall broke the school record for points in a game. He had 47 in their regional quarterfinal win. Excuse me. EJ Salatal out of Beaver Dam. He is now the school's all-time leading scorer. He finished with 1,479 points for the Golden Beavers. That's all I can track down, but man, basketball, Thursday, Saturday, it's going to be fun.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday is going to be fun.
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We've got a
couple games on Wednesday. We've got a lot of games on Thursday with boys sectional games, the start of the girls basketball state tournament, all kinds of action. Make sure you check it out at boundwisconsin.com. I don't have a new Travs trivia question for this week, but I do want to revisit last week's before we hop off of here. Without looking, can you name the 20 teams that qualified for state in boys basketball last year?
Can I ramble them off? I didn't look at the list. Can I try?
Let me pull up the list so I can 100% verify. But whenever you're ready, go ahead. You're going to start
D5, Turtle Lake Abundant Life, Sheboygan Lutheran, Cochran Fountain City. D4, the Prairie School, Bonduel, Aquinas, Mineral Point. D3, Lake Mills, Science, Freedom, Elk Mound. D2 was Tosa West, Racine Park. Tosa West, Racine Park. Who came out of here? Who are the other two?
Wausau East
Oh, yeah. They went
and
on that
Cedarburg.
run. Cedarburg, yes. Both teams that went on a run. And then D1 would have been Wisco, Marshfield. Wisco, Marshfield. I'm going by the sectionals right now, trying to place them and who played who. That was the championship. Oshkosh North. Fourth one's elite. I don't got
Wanakee.
Wanakee. I was at their sectional final game too.
That was the first state tournament, boys state tournament that I had missed in 17 years or something like that. So I would not have done well on that one. I did not see any of those games. And then the other Trav's trivia question from last week, because Madison Memorial on the girls' side had played into sectionals. The question was, what year in school was the last Madison Public School girls basketball team to advance to the state tournament? And that would be Madison West back in 2000. It was the last time a Madison girls team public school has been at state. Edgewood has been there a number of times, of course, including winning it all in 24 and 17. But a little bit of a drought for the Madison girls public teams, just as we talked about the boys teams as well.
Yeah. If you can, this again, I'm going to reiterate, this is the best time to go out to a basketball game. While the regular season is fun, sitting in a gym, that build up before the game, seeing those communities, those teams, those players come together. I think I tweeted out after the game. It's the best. It's the best in high school sports because all those communities come together. It also is the most emotional when it comes to seeing all those communities, players, and coach halved. Right? It's going to have every single day, which sucks, but because it means the end of the season is here, and never like basketball ending. That's it. Next week, Trav is going to give us a breakdown of all the official shoes at the state tournament for girls. You're going to have to give us an update on how the DJ did. DJ up at the Rush has always been great. When I was there, I think I went the last 2 or 3 years, and DJ was awesome up there. Let us know what kind of food you get, and then obviously give us a rundown on the games as well. Enjoy it Thursday through Saturday. Check out Trav. Follow him on Twitter. You can see it in his little template there. He's going to have updates, everything like that. And then go over
if
to
you're
Bound,
listening
Wisconsin.
to the podcast and not watching, by the way, you can follow me at Travis Bound.
That works. Trav, sign us off.
Yeah, let's get on the baseline.